So, good morning, folks, and great to have you here with us. And for another masterclass with the Institute of Management Consultants and Advisors, we're delighted to be supported in this initiative by Diligent, and who are our partners in this project. It's great to have them on board, and they're really kind of keen in upskilling in CDP for the members, and without their support we wouldn't be able to do these particular initiatives, and we're getting great results, and particularly in the video recordings afterwards. They've been spread broadly through the consulting community and indeed the academic community. So this morning we were very excited as we have our colleague Dimitri Shishlo with us, and Dimitri has many years of international experience. He's very well vested in this space. He's in cybersecurity risk, very well known in terms of management in that area, information technology, operations, you know, the whole digital transformation piece, and has operated within the audit and finance functions across various financial institutions. Indeed, he's lived in Switzerland, Ukraine, Germany, and France, so he has a pan-European footprint, to say the least. And back in 2017, he was living in Switzerland, I think, where he graduated from INSAD, where he got his executive MBA, and more recently in 2019 he became a member of the board of directors of Eurexim Bank. I think that would be the third largest bank in Ukraine. He can confirm that himself in due course, and that's where he supervises a deep operational and digital transformation corporate turnaround in the context of his position as chair of the operations and digital committee, a really pivotal kind of position within a very, very busy space. And we all know what's going on in Ukraine at the moment, and our sympathies and hearts go out to them. He has delivered numerous speeches and keynotes in terms of cybersecurity and risk at conferences throughout Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, and we're really delighted to have him with us here, sharing his information this morning and his knowledge, and we couldn't be happier. Dimitri founded and Secure, to bring, I suppose, a new approach, if that's fair to say, Dimitri, a holistic approach towards cybersecurity. And instead of advocating cybersecurity towards risk and fear and uncertainty and doubt, his approach really is grounded and vested in how to leverage your IT and information security, combining it really to create value and operate digital transformation, and I guess decrease operational costs, which is always a good thing from a consultant's point of view, and streamline operations. I understand from speaking to him that during his free time, the little bit he mainly enjoys training and running long distance trails across the Swiss Alps, and outdoor activities. So Dimitri, I have to say that's a very, very busy space. And you're very welcome to join us here this morning. And I suppose if I haven't done you justice in terms of the introduction, you can copper fasten any points that I've missed yourself. But it's fair to say you have in-depth knowledge of the subject matter, which we're all here to glean some knowledge on. And it is front and center when we look at the Institute ourselves. And over the last 36 months in terms of risk, Brexit was certainly front and center 36 months ago, and then March 2020 arrived, and the pandemic landed upon us with a bang out of the blue, and all kind of risk mitigation kind of changed dramatically at that point. And now that we're coming out of it, hopefully, fingers crossed, the unfortunate situation and the conflict in Ukraine has overtaken it. You've got huge issues in global interest rates rising, you've got logistics and supply chain, and you've got a huge issue in cyber risk. So the world is really pivoting in this space, and it's all hinged on cybersecurity and cyber risk. So wow. You've really got an attentive audience to hear your wisdom this morning. So perhaps without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Dimitri, and we look forward to having a chat with you during the course of this event.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Do you think that 55 minutes are enough to discuss all the topics you described?
No, but we'll make best endeavor.
Yes. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. I'd like to start my presentation by drawing a parallel between information security management, cybersecurity management, and Formula One. Until the mid-80s, Formula One was a very, very dangerous sport. Not even risky, but very dangerous sport. On average, you had 2 pilots being killed every season from from the 50s, basically from 1952 to 1982. And at some point, deaths, accidents were considered part of the job, sort of fatality. There was nothing to do about and against. And I mean, Formula One pilots called the 70s the deadly 70s. It's to show by how much Formula One was deadly and risky for the pilots. And then the pilots started advocating for higher increased security measures. They had friends, they had families, they had children, and you had also the audience, right? You had people watching TV and seeing people dying live on TV, which was also, let's say, a bad sign and a bad image for Formula One. And then they started enabling a lot of different measures. There was no cyber bullet to save pilot lives. But if you take the statistic from 1952 to 1982, you had basically 45 pilots who died during this period. And then you had, from 1982 to 2022, you had only 4 of them. How did they get there? Again, no silver bullet, nothing in particular that helps saving pilots' life, but it's a whole combination of measures, and it's recognizing that security is important and is key for the sport. So they started configuring the circuit runoffs areas with, wide enough to decrease car speed. They changed the material, the crash barriers, who had different orientation to absorb the shocks when the collisions occur. The tires around the circuit, instead of having concrete, you have gravel traps around the circuit to decrease the speed before the impact when a car gets off the track. The structure of the car is now very specific. It's a monocoque. You have the cockpit, which is called the air survivor cell, with the whole configuration. You have seat belts with 6-point harnesses. You have special tires. You have the halo, which protects the head of the pilot. You have also the whole equipment of the pilot, the gloves, the fire-resistant overalls, the physical training. Schumacher, for instance, was well known for being advanced in physical training to resist the races. And then you have medical provisions at the track. You have a private clinic for every circuit. You have medical staff. You have up-to-date medical equipment for each track. You have rescue cars, extrication teams, ambulances, helicopters. You have track marshals, fire marshals, and you have all the procedures and the training, the simulation that are exercised to anticipate and to be able to react to an accident during a race. So all this drastically decreased the mortality of the pilots. You couldn't say that Formula One is a safe sport, but it's a sport that is much safer than 40 years ago. And so in cybersecurity, we have the same thing. Security became a philosophy in Formula One, right? It's not that there are racers and car makers and security guys separately. They work together to make this sport more secure and more interesting, of course, and more deadly and less deadly to watch to the for the racers and for the spectators. So in cybersecurity, my point of view is to say that it shouldn't be a separate discipline where you have IT from one hand and security people, cybersecurity people from the other hand. The bankers, when the bankers deliver credit, they don't think only in terms of sale. They're not here to deliver as much credit as possible. They also have credit, they have risk management in mind. They look at the customer, they look at the business, they make a credit analysis. I mean, first screening, then you have special teams, specialized teams that do credit analysis. But risk management from a banker's perspective is embedded in the way they work, right? And cybersecurity is another way of looking at managing the information security of our IT infrastructure from a global point of view. We all have IT infrastructure in our companies, which is roughly the backbone of our jobs. I compare it to a fish, right? The fish is in the water. As long as the fish in the water, it doesn't really understand how much the water is important to him. As soon as the fish is taken out of the water, then it realizes by how much is key. Although he was, he's a sort of one, how can I say that? It's an osmosis between the fish and the water, right? We have the same in our companies. We have IT, which is an underlying layer for our companies. Without IT, we can't do anything. So my point of view and what I want to say as a preamble is that cybersecurity, interestingly, should be a feature, a philosophy that should be embedded in our companies. How can we do this? There is, as you said before, Patrick, many presentations I attend are very much focused on fear, on Armageddon. Soon we are going to have the IT apocalypse, brace for impact, etc. I believe there is no need to panic. Companies have to embed, they have to set up a framework against which the company and IT mainly is going to work, right? What I want to say is that, as I said before, as a philosophy, cybersecurity is first and foremost something that IT guys should have in mind and should embed in their daily routines, right? So at a board level, we have to ensure the way the banks ensure that the way the banks ensure that they have credit risk embedded in their daily processes and before delivering any credit and managing a credit, supervisory boards must ensure that the IT is working with this philosophy, with this specificity in mind, right? And this is where I always have difficulties, as I said before, dividing IT and security. So supervisory boards must ensure that the IT guys are managing their IT from a risk perspective and from a security perspective. As I said before, IT is the underlying layer of all our activities. Without IT, we can't do anything now. I give the example of a Swiss company that was manufacturing windows. 3 years ago, they were attacked by a ransomware. They didn't really have any backup provisions. And at the end of the day, 1 year later, less than 1 year later, they declared bankruptcy. You might think, what has IT to do with a window making company, right? Manufacturing company. Well, everything is, designing the windows, producing the windows is, and they use IT for doing that, right? And once everything was frozen during 3 to 4 weeks, they were not able to produce, and the debt accumulated, and they got bankrupt 1 year, less than 1 year later. So, in the global context that Patrick described before, it's a very interesting, we have a very interesting, we have a very risky, very interesting context. When I say that companies must ensure that IT works securely and managing the risks, I have 2 things in mind in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity professionals ensure 3 things. They ensure confidentiality of data. They ensure availability of IT systems, and they ensure integrity of IT systems. If you come back to, let's say, to Formula One, very often the races used to crash alone. They didn't need another racer, another driver crashing into them, right? They very often it's them that make a piloting mistake, and they get out of the track and they crash themselves. So we are, as I see today, two high risks in our company. The first risk, of course, is the external attack and the ransomware, right? We're speaking about ransomware since 2013. Unfortunately, this is an ongoing topic. So companies must do their utmost to protect against external attacks. But there is a but. Your IT relies on systems that need maintenance as well, right? The parallel between IT and the driver who gets off the track is you have systems that need maintenance on the long term, right? They need lifecycle management, they need configuration management, they need vulnerability management. And I see a second threat today in the geopolitical context is the risk, the war risk we face between China and Taiwan. Taiwan is one of the main producers of semiconductors, of IT equipment that is used in our companies. And as I said, your IT equipment, the servers, the network equipment, the routers, the firewalls, everything that is invisible for you, but that makes your IT system working, comes from China. It comes from Asia. And they need to be replaced because of, well, there is end of life. Sometimes they need to be, let's say, if you just take the replacement part, I see there the geopolitical risk is extremely, from my point of view, is extremely important to look at, because suppose that you have an IT equipment that that fails for any reason, right? Today, the delays we have in replacing them is between 6 and 12 months. So suppose that you have servers that, or core network equipment, or a router, a firewall that cannot be replaced immediately, right? And then companies will have difficulties of working further. So in the global context, I believe that ransomware can be used as a sort of weapon to weaken the organizations. If you want to weaken an economy, it's quite easy to spread ransomware attacks against small, medium businesses. The ones have less means to protect themselves against cyber attacks, right?
So, Dimitri, we're
yes.
getting a few questions in there just while
Sure.
I have you, if that's, and sorry to intrude.
Yes.
Just people are asking, in terms of ransomware, what kind of activities can they do to protect themselves if, from I suppose, a ransomware attack for small SME consultant practices? What can they do to protect themselves? And I suppose that's sort of very what you've spoken to, and I suppose the mitigation of risk element of it in a positive fashion. So while mitigating risk and protecting themselves, can they enhance their systems at the same time?
So, well, first, I believe it's awareness. It's understanding that this can happen. And well, we're very good today. I mean, the human brain is very good at being fooled easily, right? So you receive an email that deceives you, that is going to, you're going to click on the link, you are going to open an attachment that has nothing to do with your business. But in any case, just in case, maybe it's something that is business related, I open it and then I get a ransomware. So I think first is to educate the users. Unfortunately, well, of course, you can also implement what we call endpoint protection, meaning that you have special software that is installed on your PC, on your laptop, and that is going to screen whatever you receive, right? And can protect you against this. Unfortunately, nothing is bulletproof. And one user is enough to allow a ransomware spreading in networks. And this is why I believe that today it is key to have backups and restore solutions and processes, procedures, backup and restore capabilities to be able to get rid of your IT very fast. I mean, erasing what has been infected and restore it as fast as possible. Right? The example I took before, the window manufacturing company, is very interesting. The company didn't have any backup capabilities. So once they've been ransomwared, they didn't have any means to wipe and restore something they had before, right? So, well, I believe that for ransomware, you have endpoint protection, but backup and restore capabilities are absolutely key. And today, it's probably the most important for all companies to have is being able to restore backups from external backups, right? I don't want to go too much into technical details, but basically, today, very often you have one main production server, you have a backup server, which are linked together. So if you have a ransomware infecting one production server, the infection will automatically spread in the backup server. So this is why it is key to have offline backups that will not be touched by the ransomware in case of infection. Is there another question, or do you want me to
Yeah, there are some questions coming in there,
Yes.
Dimitri, through the back channel. I suppose people are kind of interested very much in the positive aspect that you had mentioned earlier in terms of not being fearful of it, and I suppose turning a negative into a positive. But from what I'm hearing, you're saying is the supply chain is coming out of a singular source which has issues.
Yes.
But is there an alternative supply chain available at this time that doesn't have issues? It was one of the questions.
Yes, that's a very good question. What I'm doing in information security, as Patrick mentioned before, trying to create value, right? Very often, companies and small, medium businesses are doing IT by themselves. The point is that IT became very technical, very specialized. And on top of that, you have to add security. For companies with 50, 100 people, it's extremely difficult to keep a range of different IT specialties and security specialists. It is complicated, it is very costly. So very often in my assignments, I notice something is that instead of doing IT by themselves, companies should outsource it to managed services. So roughly, you can concentrate on your main business, and you have your infrastructure, you have your maintenance, you have life cycle of the equipment that is managed by an external company. They're professional in this area, so they know that this server is going to be replaced next year. They anticipate that they're going to take care of this. And so at the same time, when you outsource your IT, you are solving security problems. So, I mean, if the company is serious, of course, right? So the company is doing to do a lot of a range of security activities. Well, something that is, again, security from confidentiality, integrity, and availability point of view, right? So when I say security is, I mean, from a global point of view, availability of systems is included in cybersecurity. So when you outsource your IT, you are creating value because roughly for the same price, you are going to pay for IT specialists, a whole range of different IT specialists, a network engineer, a help desk, a workplace specialist, and security guys.
And would your recommendation be to outsource your security to specialist consultant houses or IT providers? Would that be your recommendation at this point?
Yeah, I think I believe in many cases, and for most companies, it becomes crucial to outsource the IT and not do that in-house. And at the same time, so you are going to spare some cost, right? Because you won't have to pay for the renewal, the maintenance of your servers, manage all this. It's going to be managed by the outsourcer. And so you are increasing your bottom line, and you are also increasing your security at the same time. Okay. So it's a global consideration of IT.
Okay, and just I suppose a question on that, which has just come in terms of the consideration of that. Two questions just come in there. One is, what's your kind of sense of security in the cloud from as question number one?
Yes.
And is it secure? And secondly, I suppose given our governance focus as well, is what should be the focus of non-executive directors regarding cybersecurity next year? Where should they be focusing? So those two questions have just come in.
Okay. I just want to answer a question of, I mean, someone popping up asking what the meaning of offline backup is. Offline backup is very simple, is that you have a tape on which let's say the image of the service, the data are written, but they are physically separated from the from your servers, right? So you write on an external tape, then the tape is removed from your how can I say that? From the tape reader writer, stored, and it is physically segregated from your network. Okay, I'm coming back to your question. Whether the cloud is secure. There are different types of cloud, right? You have platform as a service, you have software as a service, you have infrastructure as a service. It all depends on the cloud model. What you need to have in mind is that ultimately, even if you outsource in the cloud, you are ultimately responsible for any data breach, any data that is stored in the cloud, right? Cloud can be a game changer in the sense of availability of data, of cyber resilience, right? But ultimately, you have to ensure the roles and responsibilities between you and the cloud provider. And this is why the legal aspects in the cloud are extremely important to ensure that you have a data breach or you have an incident. I wouldn't even speak about data breach, an IT incident. You think that what it was the responsibility of the cloud provider, and then the cloud provider says, no, in your contract, it's written that it's your responsibility, right? So the legal aspect, the contractual aspect is extremely, extremely important in cloud management to understand roles and responsibilities. But at the end of the day, everything relies on the shoulder of the customer. It depends. There is no definite answer for the cloud, right? If you store your data in Amazon's or Microsoft's cloud, you have an increased level of confidence that is going to be secure. But again, secure from which point of view? The infrastructure is going to be resilient. It's 100% sure. Well, 100%, 99.999% sure that is going to be resilient. But depending on the way you are going to configure your service, you might also be the victim of a breach, right? So there is no definite answer, but I believe that today it's a more, let's say, cyber resilient solution than doing everything in-house, especially for the small, medium businesses. I can't disclose too many details, but very briefly, before March the 8th, Ukrainian banks were not allowed to use cloud providers outside of the country because of sovereignty reasons. Basically, all data should remain in Ukraine. After March the 8th, the National Bank of Ukraine changed the law and allowed Ukrainian banks using clouds abroad. And many banks use this opportunity to outsource their data. So now they have an increased level of resilience because you are protected against a missile hitting your main office or your data center. But you have a different risk, which is now, how do I ensure that I am able to have a stable internet connection to reach my data, which is abroad first? And second, you have a sovereignty issue, because you handed over your data to an external cloud company in an external jurisdiction, right? So you managed one risk from the one hand, but you created new risk from the other hand. You will have to manage as well. So again, cloud, it's not the panacea, but from a resilience point of view, I believe it's much better than doing everything in-house. Second question was what boards should be aware of for the next years, right?
Yeah.
I believe that the board should be very aware that increasingly they will be held responsible for any data breaches, any IT incidents that occur in their companies. At the end of the day, anything has an impact on the bottom line. We've seen, and this is why I always come back to the image of the Formula One driver getting off the track by himself. We've seen, at least I have in mind two examples. One was British Airways, the other was LOT. Two airline companies that were grounded for several hours, and we know how much an hour of grounding costs to an airline company, because they haven't, the IT guys, whoever was responsible, didn't renew security certificates. Security certificates are like ID cards or passports that allow two systems talking to each other securely, ensuring that I'm the right system, I'm communicating with the, they just recognize each other, right? And the second or the minute the certificate expires, it's exactly like losing your passport and not being able to be identified, right? So certificates must be renewed on a regular basis when they expire. If you don't do this, well, then you ground your company or your airline company, right?
So it's important to keep updating kind of updates and kind of upgrades and so on, I guess, in that context.
Yes, but it's also important to have in mind that to have processes in mind, right? There are no bulletproof, again, there are no bulletproof systems in security in ensuring your availability of systems. But my favorite one, my favorite measure when I'm doing audits or cybersecurity assessment, my favorite is, do you have a full, comprehensive, exhaustive inventory of your IT assets? Do you know exactly what you operate? And do you know exactly where it is located? Because if you don't know what you operate, you are going to have difficulties to protect it. And operating a system is understanding when was the server installed, so physically which server, which operating system, when was it patched, do you have security certificates attached to this, the access rights that are linked to these systems, etc., right? So the inventory for me is the absolute key, the absolute basis in everything that touches IT security together.
And is there a template available, Dimitri, for that sort of inventory that people could kind of use, a basic template anywhere that you'd recommend?
Not really. There are standards from the COBIT framework. COBIT framework, which is managed by ISACA.
Okay. We might get a link to that later, perhaps, and send it out.
Yes, I mean let's say the concept is called CMDB Configuration Management Database. It's basically
configuration. Okay.
Configuration Management Database. It's basically a repository in which you put all your information assets, you inventory your information assets, and you manage them from this point of view.
Okay. Okay, another question has come in,
Yes.
Dimitri, which again from one of our colleagues on the active consulting space, and she has said that she spends a lot of time on the road, and to that end, she's operating as a road warrior, as a, on a laptop, and she is just kind of querying. Obviously, she uses open source Wi-Fi on a not irregular basis, with a password login, and she's just wondering, is that going to end in tears, or what's your advice in terms of using those publicly available Wi-Fi sources?
So you have to understand one thing, is that your laptop, when you're using Wi-Fi connection, your laptop, your end user equipment is communicating with the Wi-Fi router. And so the signal is in the air. It's not a cable to which you need a physical access. Everyone who is around is able to intercept the signal between the computer and the router. So everything which is transmitted over the internet can be intercepted. So as often as possible, I personally use I use the shared connection from my smartphone because the risk is of course lower. It goes to the network. The mobile network, and not from the Wi-Fi. If you don't really have the choice, then I use a VPN, a virtual private network, which basically creates a tunnel between your laptop or your end user equipment, might be the smartphone as well, and the servers of your VPN provider. So basically it creates an encrypted tunnel, and everything that goes into the tunnel is invisible to other users.
Okay. Another question in there, Dimitri, they're all beginning to ask questions now, just in terms of software available out there, and we would be familiar with some of them, obviously. Are there any recommendations that you would use for software for cybersecurity, kind of off-the-shelf solutions?
For after?
Off the shelf that you can buy,
solutions.
pretty easily.
Not really, in the sense that
that'll come as a blow, Dimitri, to MacV and so on, I have to say.
Sorry?
That will come as a blow to those that are using MacV.
It depends. It depends on what exactly you want to do. Is it an antivirus? Is it an anti-malware?
All of the above.
And that's only for end users. But then you have multiplicity of different software and systems that can be used to securely manage databases, security monitor your network, scan for vulnerabilities, securely configure your IT systems, etc., etc. The range is absolutely is incredible today. There is a lot of creativity. The VCs have let's say a lot of proposals coming from cybersecurity startups. Again, depends on what you want to do exactly.
Okay, and another question that's just come in there, I see. Is Apple Mac still as secure as they used to be over, say, the other tools in the marketplace? But it's an interesting question, I suppose.
Secure depends on what you call secure, right? It will depend on your configuration. For instance, I systematically use the firewall which is embedded in the Macs. I systematically encrypt all the data which are on my laptop, on my desktop. And a ransomware will not come out of the blue. It will always come out of a link on which you click, or an attachment on which you click. And then whether Mac or PC if you click on those links, if you open the attachments, there is nothing bulletproof, right?
Okay.
So this this depends on the user afterwards, and depends on whether you put a password to your laptop or not. If you don't put a password, then basically everyone who opens a laptop is able to see your data. If you think security from let's say a virus malware point of view, I would say probably yes, because I mean they are more secure than the PCs, because you write a malware for the majority of the equipment which is used across the world, right? So from a cost benefit point of view, you better attack Windows systems that are spread all over the world than the Mac ones.
Okay.
You have less Macs in the networks, of course.
Okay. And another question that's just come in there, I see, is on passwords. How often should you change them, and what's your opinion on password vaults and so on?
I'm sure you all of you had the experience of changing the password regularly in your company, right? So what happens at the end of the day is that you put a figure at the end of the password, and you just change the password. You increase the figure every time you change your password, which doesn't really increase the security of the password. My recommendation is to use a password manager. And this is what I do for maybe 10 years already. It's a vault in which you can store every password you have. You don't need to, you need to remind remind only one password, the one that opens the vault. The rest is, well, I have, I don't know, 600 entries maybe in my password manager. Every time I create a password, I create a random password composed of 30 different characters. I can't even tell you exactly which passwords I use. I use only one, and I retrieve them from the password manager. And this is where I think that security people have a value creation perspective when they, instead of, let's say, finger pointing the users who don't use complex passwords, different on each systems, etc., who are going to insist that a company installs password managers for their employees.
Okay, and any particular software manager, or sorry, password manager that you use?
I use 1Password.
Which one?
1Password.
ONE.
Let me type it.
I can see all the people on the thing immediately getting on their keyboards, checking it out.
This one.
1Password. Okay.
1Password.
Okay.
Extremely useful. Yeah, I love it.
That's a good tip. Thank you, Dimitri.
Sure.
Where do you see it going over the next 36 months? I mean, when we look at it here in the Irish context, and we talk to management consultants and so on, we had a huge, massive hit to the infrastructure here with the health service. Yes. Was ransom attacked there a while back and caused chaos within the structure, really chaotic. And people are very aware of it. You know, from a board's point of view, cyber risk is in the top 3 risks now, you know, the whole time, and people are very aware of it and that skill set. Where do you see it going over the next 36 months? You know, where do you see the next big trend within cyber risk occurring?
This is a question I was asked, I think 4 years ago in an interview. And I said, I don't really see trends. And the guy said he doesn't know anything about security. There are different trends, right? There are vulnerability trends, and I believe that ransomware is going to flourish because at the end of the day, it works on the human vulnerability. So you have to take into account that you are one day, sooner or later, you are going to get a ransomware in your company. So what do you do in case of a ransomware? And again, as I said, backup and restore capabilities are key in this perspective.
Okay.
Protection works, of course, but backup and restore capabilities are absolutely key today. In terms of in terms of threats, I believe it depends also on how events are going to unfold between Russia and Ukraine. Again, as I said, if you want to weaken an economy, send multiple ransomware attacks against small, medium businesses. They have the least recovery capacities, and they are the most important ones in the economy. It's really the blood and cells of the economy, right? Financially, and financially, they are extremely vulnerable. If we speak about, let's say, what should be done by companies to protect themselves, I don't see a change since the past 10 to 15 years. It's always the same, right? Let me give you some elements on which companies have to focus to secure themselves. The first one is the asset inventory, as I said before, is knowing exactly what you operate in your IT infrastructure. Very often you have a server which is forgotten somewhere, which is an open door for criminals. This is what happened with the NotPetya ransomware that infected 10% of Ukraine's PCs in 2017, and which caused the chaos of, well, roughly $10 billion worldwide. It was a forgotten PC somewhere under a table. I'm not going to explain the story, the whole story, but this is how it happened. The second key element from my point of view is user access management, identity management. Who's got access to what? Ensuring that people who leave a company get access is removed immediately, and who is able to do what exactly in which systems, right? Which power do you have? And more precisely is the power of the administrative accounts. Those who are extremely powerful to roughly do anything in an IT network, who have full power of everything. These are usually the ones that are going to be exploited by the criminals. So managing identities. A third feature is the network segmentation. Basically, it's similar to have, imagine a bank that is extremely well protected from the outside. But once you enter inside, you have everything on the same floor on an open space. The risk department, compliance department, cash desk, valuables, the boardroom, the CEO's office, and everyone's on the same floor. So once you penetrate inside, you're able to go anywhere and to grab any documents, listen for any conversation, etc. So network segmentation segments your network in different areas, and especially if you get a ransomware, you can isolate it in an area, logically, let's say, remove the ransomware and ensure it is not going to replicate against the whole area. Right?
So it's kind of like that cells or a submarine or a ship where if there's a fire on board, you lock down the area, cauterize it, and move on. Okay, We could talk about this all day. It's such an interesting topic, but unfortunately we're running out of time. And if anyone has any burning questions, please get them in, the next moment or two, because we're going to have to wrap it up here, because I'm conscious of time. And Dimitri has another meeting that he has to go to. So he was very kind to give us this time this morning. I suppose maybe, I find this area very interesting, Dimitri, as I say, and everyone is touched by IT now in the lives that we lead. And in the management consultancy profession, we are grounded in it, because by virtue of our endeavor, a lot of our processes and structures are grounded within IT, and we try to be more efficient and use IT to that purpose as well. Have you seen any kind of interesting developments in terms of I suppose hot tips, for want of a better word, in terms of apps or anything like that that you could use to assist yourself in the whole area of risk mitigation, or that you would use on your smartphone, which almost have become like a limb to us now, is a question. I see there's two questions coming in similar to that: what is the best scanner for vulnerability scanning? But I suppose to that question, most people are using their phones, okay, as their kind of standard access point to, I suppose, the cloud and search and all the various things that they're using it. In terms of phone security, are there any top tips that you would give us?
Wow. Well, I think everyone's used to have a password today. Let's say a code that locks that locks and encrypts the
you kind of, the phone, people are using their thumbs or their eyes now. What do you think of that? Optical scanning. They're using optical scanning or using their thumbprint.
Yeah, again, people are very often very skeptical when I say use a password manager. They say, well, then all our passwords are in the same basket, right? I said yes, but if you put them on an Excel file, it's more vulnerable, and if you have the same password everywhere, it's much more vulnerable. So you have to balance the risks, right? I don't really have let's say from the smartphone point of view, I don't really have an advice.
Okay.
The advice I have from a global point of view for cybersecurity is, first and foremost, people and processes are key before the systems, right?
Okay.
You have people, process, technology.
The behaviors.
The technology comes from maybe 10-15% of the defense, but the whole I mean, draw a parallel with the war situation, right? You have the warriors, we have the fighters who are the front lines, but you have the whole supply, and to start attacking, you have intelligence, you have supply, you have food, you have equipment. Everything was planned beforehand, and then you can start attacking, right? So the whole preparatory work, the whole processes, and the people, how you get there, are absolutely key before you start attacking, right?
Okay, thank you, Dimitri. We promised that we'd have everyone out. One final question, it's a quick one. It's a yes or no. What is the best scanner for vulnerability scanning, in your opinion?
Well, I know that Nessus is one of the most widespread tool. Okay. But then it depends on, again, what you want to scan and how you configure the tool to scan, right? You can have let's say, you have scans that can destabilize the network. You have light scans. I mean, depends, but usually Nessus offers a lot of features.
Okay. All right. Well, we will leave it on Nessus. So as our byword of caution moving forward. And Dimitri, thank you so much. I know you're running between meetings, and we really appreciate it. And maybe we'll have you back again in due course to give us a catch up on where you see things developing. And best of luck over the next. We're with you and your comrades in spirit over the difficult times that's been faced in Europe at the moment. So look, thank you, Dimitri. And in conclusion, folks, thank you for listening. We'll be sending out the recording. Equally, I would say that we have another masterclass coming up on mediation, which is very popular. I put in a link in the chat, which you can register and so on. And thank you for your support. So good morning, everyone, and good luck. And thank you once again, Dimitri.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye.